This beautiful setting for playing the game of fast-pitch softball today is known as Bun Ryan Field. From 1953 to 1977, it was the home of the world's only five-man fast-pitch softball team, the Pierotti Clowns, and that's the story we want to share with you today. After the S-Site softball team won the New Mexico State Championship for the second time in a row in 1952, Lou Pierotti, third baseman for the team, and Bun Ryan, the pitcher for the team, were sitting together reviewing the scorebook.
I said, I think we could make a five-man softball team. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, there isn't a ball hitting out in the outfield. We don't need the outfielders. So I kept talking to him, and I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll buy a little jersey. We'll call ourselves Pierotti's Clowns. We'll play the game for charity, and we have nothing to lose, everything to gain, and we'll go out there and play the game.
Lou had the idea to form the Clowns, which was a five-man softball team, kind of you know, clowning around and making fun and entertaining the audience in a different way than a normal softball game.
The idea of the clowns and the outfits and the face, I think, was probably from your mom.
Yeah, Mom, the way I remembered it is he had this idea, five men, and they could, you know, beat everybody. And my mom said, you're crazy, but if you're gonna do it, you better dress up like clowns and pretend, because if you lose, it's gonna be a disaster. I think it was her idea. She said, we can paint you up like clowns, because she painted them up the first time. It wasn't like they all knew how to do it. She actually taught them how to put the makeup on and put the you know, the Pond's cold cream on their face first, because if they tried to put the paint on, without the cold cream, you never get it off.
A plan was on deck for the lineup to be announced for the 1953 season. But you have to put the shelves in before you put the panels in, or will?
So the idea, I can show you.
Oh, you got a plan,
I got a
map.
plan. So this is not all the artifacts, but the
jacket
can
is
go
over there.
So that can just all go on this bottom shelf here.
But on the shelf, nothing goes below that bottom
No,
shelf?
no.
Okay.
And then there's enough room for the panels.
Manager Lou Pierotti's first choice in a player was Bun Ryan, whose superb pitching ability was essential to the success of the team. He needed to keep the batter busy swinging at the air while the infielders were performing their hilarious acts of comedy.
The reason they could do that is that they had a pitcher that could dominate the other team.
And so I had to try to learn to make the ball do something besides just go in there straight. And so that following spring, my catcher and I were working out one night, and I was fooling around with different grips on the ball and twisting it certain ways. And all of a sudden, I threw a pitch, and he said, "How did you do that?" And I told him how. He said, "Well, keep it up," because he said that thing moved.
But I remember Bun was up pitching. I was batting right-handed, and Bun had a pitch. It was called a rise ball, and nobody could hit it. You sit back in the box, and the ball would come up like perfect strike. By the time it got to you, it was this high.
He could make it rise, drop, slide. He could throw a screwball, and also a very effective pitch was called a changeup, to where he would take a lot of speed off of it and the ball would kind of float toward the batter, kind of messing up their timing. But his most effective pitch, the one he says took him to 7 world tournaments, was his rise ball.
100 miles an hour. What does that look like?
It looks like an explosion is what it looks like. Yes. He would take the full, I think, whirlwind wind-up, and when he would lean back to get the leverage on the ball and then step forward, at some point in time when he was releasing the ball, he was almost completely flat down on his, it was just stretched out. You could see him in pictures that was just, he really let go of that ball. He put everything into it.
Bun Ryan struck out so many batters that people wondered, how fast is he actually throwing the ball? Attempts were made to measure the speed. 8mm camera, high-speed framing camera, as was used in explosives experiments for the laboratory, and early police radar.
The guys in Tucumcari said, there's no way that a guy can throw a softball 100 miles an hour. Well, we've got a guy in Los Alamos that can throw it 100 miles an hour. No way, no way. And they got button heads on that, and they finally evidently made a little bit of a bet, and they said, okay, you smart guys in Los Alamos, come on to Tucumcari and we're going to check you out. So they scheduled a game at Tucumcari. We get all set and ready to go down. We're going to set up a radar unit on home plate, and we're going to prove whether you can throw that softball at 100 miles an hour. Bun said, okay, let me warm up. So we get everything all set up. These 2 or 3 state policemen come and set up their radar unit. They get it all set, and they say, okay, we got it set. Bun, are you ready? I'm about ready. Okay. So Bun takes the mound and he throws a couple pitches. Okay, it's all ready, let's go. Bun winds up and throws a pitch and he hits the radar unit. Those 2 cops went over and looked at it and looked at one another and they says, he broke it. He broke it. It don't work. Well, what are we going to do? We'll just have to fake it. So, okay, we got it fixed. It's ready. You ready, Bun? Yeah, I'm ready. Bun throws a pitch. They look at it. 87. He didn't get there. Okay, you ready, Bun? Okay. He winds up and throws another one. Oh, 89. Not quite. You ready, Bun? Yeah. He throws it. Oh, 100. I don't know who paid off who, but I'm pretty sure Kiwanis didn't pay Los Alamos.
The story was that Henry was a machinist and a physicist here at the laboratory. He was Bun's catcher, and so what they used to catch in softball is called a trapper. Looks like a first base mitt. But Bun would wear out those gloves. You know, he would get to where the thumb part was so worn out that it started really hurting his thumb when he would catch the ball. So he went down to the local butcher shop and got a big beef rib bone. And he took that glove apart and he put that rib bone in there, right?
Yeah.
And sewed it back up and Bun just pulverized that ball.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah. So then he went to one of his, early in the lab, they had a machine shop, and they had this guy fashion this piece of steel that they put in the glove and sewed that up. And so that lasted with the guy for a while, but you can imagine, the broken fingers and broken thumbs that catchers used to get from a foul tip or something of that nature, because it came in there pretty fast.
Bun Ryan was the clowns, Bun and Lou.
He practiced very hard at it, and his controlling pitches, he could throw the ball wherever he wanted it to be. And he could make it jump and dive and slide, and he could do all of that stuff. So that came with a lot of work. But also I believe that a lot of his talent was God-given, because just not a handful of pitchers that I've ever heard of could break 100 miles an hour.
Bun was so fast. Bun always drove fast. He'd go to the Rockies games or the Broncos games and drive home, and he was always going fast. He got stopped once by a state policeman. And the policeman said, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And Bun says, "Not as fast as my fastball. Not as fast as my fastball." And it was fast.
It is generally believed that the most accurate measurements show that he was pitching the ball 104 miles per hour when Major League Baseball pitchers were barely approaching that level. Oh, look at Lou. Got that happy face, all those happy kids around him.
How well the photographs blew up. Like, that's pretty good.
Yeah. That's a good point. And Mary Lee identified these as Lassie League players around 1960. Got names for bunches of them. Yep. I wonder how do we let these people know that they're on display? Those are creating a community. So that one goes right here. Oh yeah, because you need that bigger artifact over there.
Well, I grew up watching the clowns. I was born and raised here in town, and we used to go look forward to watching the clowns play. And there was no soccer, very little football, flag football, but baseball was the thing. Going out to the ball fields and the stables was a big thing. So watching the clowns play was a highlight of growing up as a kid.
And I was very fortunate that my wife enjoyed. She always told people later on she raised her children in center field at the bomber field. The kids would play in the sand pile over here against the fence while we were playing baseball. But without that, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't got the support that I got from my family. They loved it.
But yeah, they love to play. And Verdi says it best, I think, when he said it was a family affair, and he thanked his family for, and all of us understand that if it wasn't for the wives and the kids putting up with them doing this, that it would never been as nice as it was.
Oh, my wife really enjoyed it. My kids, they would go over with me over to Lou's and back on this patio while we were painting up, and they'd laugh and have fun, and then they'd ride out with us. We'd go in a kind of a caravan, and people would take a second look at all these cars going by with these clown faces going. They really had fun at the games.
Softball, the league games, you played 2 games a week for 6 weeks. That wasn't enough. You got to play ball every night, And so I think that added about 7 to 10 games extra and filled out the summer for them, and I think they all enjoyed it greatly. And the fans, of course, were more fans, and when there's more fans and some cheering, it makes everybody a better ball player.
You know, I've always felt that Los Alamos was kind of a big family. It keeps getting bigger and bigger, but when I was growing up, you know, it was still quite small.
Entertainment they had brought to Los Alamos, and how it kind of really brought us together as a community. You know, whenever the Clowns would play, they would have quite a crowd show up at Bombers Field.
When I posted this on Facebook, in 2 days, I got over 200 responses from kids who grew up. Say hi to Verdi for me. They were a big deal. And of course, finding out later on that they were in the very first issue of Sports Illustrated was kind of a big deal. It was a big deal.
That part of it, on the side, okay. Okay. So this was from a magazine Mike Ryan has.
Right.
That's got all these signatures on it.
Yeah.
That we just did a photo representation and you cut it down to size.
Yep, yep. And
Bun Ryan and Lou Pierotti were the only men who played for all 25 seasons. Verdi Raper joined in the second season and played till the end. Lou Pierotti was the manager and chief comedian. Bun Ryan was the essential pitcher. But every member of the team needed to be a superb athlete. They needed to be able to field like vacuum cleaners, run like gazelles, throw the ball like a cannon, and hit the ball out of the park. Over the course of the 25 years, no fewer than 36 men donned the uniform of a Pierotti's Clown and took the field.
The game, softball was such an incredibly important game, and a professional, they played it like professionals in the 50s. Teams in the East Coast played it for money. It became a game that was very intense. When you're in a 2-to-1 ball game, you cannot make a mistake as an infielder. The pitcher's going to strike out 14 men. There's only going to be 2 or 3 hits a game, and when they hit them, they're going to be scooped up by the fielders. So every play was seriously intense. And I think that some of the players played very, very hard to win, and that's why Dad, particularly early on, made sure the rules weren't broken and wanted to win fair and square. He was going to be his pitcher and those 4 men against their pitcher and the 9 men.
Very few hit it out there really far, but when they did, we always had somebody behind us like Verdi or Lou telling us where the runners were. Just take that next base and see if you can make it. And most of the times they didn't make it. We did time it by what the players behind us were telling us where the runners were. And that way we could, you know, when you turn, you didn't have to look for the runner, you just turn and threw it where they said to throw it. We threw out a lot of people that way.
The fans could see how these 3 guys could operate behind me, and it was really a joy to watch these guys, because say a ball went to right field, the first baseman would go get the ball, the second baseman would become the relay man, and they both could run like deer and throw like they had arms like cannons. And that relay man would get the ball. If that guy's headed for third, he's dead. If he's rounded third and headed home, he's really dead, because they're going to get him.
In the 200 games that the Pierotti's Clowns played over a 25-year period, some of the most memorable, even today, are the games they played against the Penitentiary Rocks out of the Santa Fe prison and the Albuquerque Dukes, a AAA farm club for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Going to the pen and playing was always a good experience. It always opened your eyes a whole lot. I enjoyed it. More joyful when I was coming out than when I was going in. In the early days, those guys didn't have anything. They had their allotment of cigarettes, and they betted among themselves when the Clowns came to play. They would bet their cigarettes against your cigarettes, and we'd go down and beat them, and that was it. but they were waiting for us. They always enjoyed, they always accepted us, kind of like with open arms. And then one year that I remember, they must have had a lot of pretty good check riders, because the field was decorated with chalk and they had clowns in the batting boxes, and they had things around that was pretty good artwork.
Well, I didn't know much about it. As we were walking through, there were 6 Spanish guys that knew me and said, "Goofy, what the hell are you doing here?" I said, "Playing ball." I said, "What the hell are you doing there?" They knew me because they must have been from Española.
He would sit on a little golf chair that was as flimsy a looking thing as you can ever imagine. He'd sit on that chair. It would fold up so it could go in a golf bag. And so he'd unfold it out and a tripod of legs would come out and he'd sit on this little chair and play the concertina. And he'd sing some songs, and he'd always have something for the occasion to sing, and the fans liked it quite a bit. Bun's trying to pitch and he's singing songs. At the state pen, this just happened. He just decided one time, he pulled out his normal tunes and was singing away. And then, my goodness, in this particular time, he changed the lyrics just a bit to sing, "If I had the wings of an angel, over these prison bars I would fly." And oh my God, the lyrics just hit the spot for the Rocks, and they cheered from the stands. They were the most appreciative fans in the world anyway, and they really liked the Clowns. They really did.
It wasn't until 1970 that by special arrangement, the inmates, the penitentiary Rocks, were allowed to come to Los Alamos and play on the Clowns' home field. Playing with the Albuquerque Dukes was a whole different experience. That was a supreme mix of baseball and softball.
Well, when the baseball team was on the field, which would be the Dukes, and they pitched the baseball on a regulation baseball field, and we batted against the baseball. When we reversed it, the pitching rubber was moved up a little bit closer. The softball field was, the bases were a little closer, and they were laid out before the game started, of course, so the switch was just made automatically. And there was a few of the guys that were playing, figured on being Major League Baseball players, and they didn't want to have anything to do with playing against that softball team. No way, I'm out here to get a little bit higher in the baseball field, and no softball for me. So after Bun pitches and strikes out the whole lineup, a few of those big hitters thought, let me get a piece of that.
There's hardly any way to tell that story without wishing that everybody in life could see it once, because one of his dad's many acts was to taunt the best hitter on the team by telling him, "Don't feel bad, big boy, he strikes out good hitters." And if that didn't get him riled up enough, he'd say something else after the second strike. And in this particular game, they decided, I think he knew the guy was coming up, and they decided to warm up with the ash can lids, and they all had ash can lids on. And here comes this home run hitter trying to make the Albuquerque Dukes to make the Dodgers later on a professional team. I mean, a true professional team. But the kid was determined, and he was huge. And Bun threw the first pitch in, and he swung at it and missed. And I'm telling you, the air left the park. He swung so hard. On the second pitch, Dad got closer, banging the ash can lid and screaming, "Don't feel bad, big boy. He strikes out good hitters." making noise with the ash can lid. And now he's about 15 to 17 feet from the batter. He wasn't much farther than me from the camera here. And honestly, the next pitch goes in, he misses it again, and Dad gives him another round of don't feel bad, big boy. And now the fans are pretty quiet. I think they're beginning to root for the batter because that's their team. That's the guy, they'd like him to be successful, you know. And sure enough, Bun throws the next blazing fastball in.
Hit one right on the button, one of Bun's fastballs, and it went from the bat to the third base.
And all you could hear was the crack of the bat and the bang of the ball hitting the trash can lid 15 feet away, and Dad smothering it up against his chest. Not a soul in the stadium thought he possibly caught it. The batter never left the batter's box. He just stood there looking at Dad at third base. And then when Dad raised his hand up with the ball in his hand, the fans just came unglued.
This big home run hitter. And that guy hit one, he hit a shot. And Lou's hand went up and he caught that thing and held back. And it's the best, one of the most athletic plays I've ever seen anyone make. And Lou was just shaking after that because this guy hit it hard.
Bun was getting kind of up in age a little bit. He was still Bun Ryan, but he wasn't 25 anymore. Well, I'm playing third base, and before the game started, Bun is up on the mound and he's warming up. And he's just throwing slow, just getting warm. And I hear the cat calls from the visitor's dugout to my right. "Get off the field, old man, you rag arm. What are you doing out there?" First batter comes up, and Bun threw a pitch at him that I swear had a tail behind it. And the guy just leaned back. He was amazed at the speed that this old man could throw. And I look over at the opposing team's dugout, and everybody to a man is going. And after that, Bun just started mowing them down, one right after another. He might have thrown a no-hitter that day, I don't really remember. But after the game, I asked him, what gave you the energy to do that? And he says, well, and I'm paraphrasing, he says, well, they got me angry. And when you got Bun angry, you paid the price.
Don, that's an ash can lid, like the infielders used in that famous Albuquerque Dukes game.
He had that little clown bag that he carried. It's part of the monument out in front where he's got that suitcase with his name on it. And inside the suitcase were all of those acts and all of those gimmicks and props. And the French horn, he just, every once in a while, he'd pull it out and he'd either sneak up behind a batter and honk right behind him in the back. And that would disturb the guy just enough to get him wondering when the next honk was coming.
Lou Pierotti carried a decorated suitcase with all of his props in it to every game. Some of the acts that people really enjoyed were pitching the ball blindfolded, pitching a ball that was on an elastic string, pitching the ball from second base, and many other things.
Gave those to him.
So these weren't necessarily ones that he used in his act. They were after the fact, but reminded him of when he would do that.
Right. His seemed to be more in this style here, and some of these others are different. But yeah, she
can you describe what that act was?
Well, with this act, he would take everybody could spin one. It was a time when kids were spinning them all over town, snapping them, and they'd spin on the sidewalk. But what he learned to do, he would take a big plate and put the big plate in his mouth, and he'd spin the top, and then catch it in his plate like this, and hold it in his teeth, and he'd dance it around and flip it up a little bit like this, and it'd bounce up and down. And then he later brought me into the act and gave me 2 6-inch little targets like you would use for dart, a rubber dart. Poop. So I'd have these two little target plates. He'd flip it to me off of the plate. I'd catch it, and I'd take it to this plate, and then I'd take it behind my back and flip it over, put it on his plate, and then give it back to him, and he'd catch it in his teeth again. And he'd do it right in front of the fans, in front of the screen, and the kids just, they just marveled at some of the things. And of course, Bun's pitching, trying to get people struck out while this is going on. It was amazing.
Oh, everybody's favorite clown act was when Bun would pitch they'd take a grapefruit and paint it white.
Early on, he actually did cantaloupes. And he was in the restaurant business, so he'd ordered some cantaloupes for the store, and he tried cantaloupes. And they were heavier and harder. And a few times with the cantaloupe said, that's not going to work. They're hard to throw. They're lopsided. And he went to the grapefruit, and he'd paint them up, and Bun just didn't like that either very much. They were squishy a little bit, and Dad would slow the game down a little bit, let Bun pitch a pitch, and then say, this guy's a pretty good hitter. He says, let me do it. And so Dad would go in, and he would announce to the fans and to the batter that, by gosh, I'm going to fill in for Bun here because you're pretty damn good, and I'm going to get you out. And so he'd set it all up, and then he would slip the ball, sometimes out of his shirt, substitute a grapefruit for the ball, and Dad would lob a nice softball. Oh, before that, he would announce that he was going to pitch. The two other infielders would run out into the outfield saying, back up, because they knew dang well he couldn't pitch. Bun would go to first base, and then when he'd finally throw the pitch, the batter was sure he was going to knock a home run, and all he would get was a face full of melon.
The bat was given to Lou by the butcher at the grocery store. And then that was to tamp down the beef to push it on through the machine that made the hamburger. They decided I was the smallest one on the team. and they let me do it. Get it out of the bat bag and lay it out, and I'd get a hold of the bat handle. The other guys would get around it, and we'd lift it up and get it on my shoulder, walk it to home base, and I'd stagger along like it was just about to weight me down. Put all I could into it, but not... So they'd get me to the base and set me down. And then one of them would say, okay, pitcher, you better throw it because it's getting pretty heavy and he ain't gonna be swing if you don't throw it pretty soon. So the pitcher would throw the ball and I would spin around.
And fall unconscious at the plate from the weight of the bat and lay flat on the ground and have two fellows come over. One grab the ankles and one grab him under the shoulders. Then Dad would come over and look around at the fans and take off his shoe and revive him with the stench of his foot. And he'd get up and ooh, and make a noise, and Dad would scream, and then pretty soon Dad would look out of the corner of his eye, and I'd come out of the dugout, picked up the bat, threw it over my shoulder, and started to the dugout with the bat, and he'd yell, screaming and yelling, you always ruin the act, you're always ruining the act. So,
if you want to see or hear people laugh, that's one of the times you get to hear somebody laugh with a real laugh. It went over real big, and we did it, I guess we did it every game.
We would go up to bat, and I'd take two bats to warm up with. I'd drop one of them, and then I'd take a regular bat and go up there, and the pitcher would start to pitch, and I'd drop that full-length bat, reach in my back pocket, and pull out this half bat and use it with one hand to try to get a hit. Sometimes I did, most times no, but it was a lot of fun. The crowd liked it, so we just kept doing it at least once a game.
Well, you'd go out and collect a bunch of pop bottles, turn them in, you'd have enough money for a ticket, come out and watch the game. And it was very well attended up here. The clowns were a big deal in Los Alamos. Everybody loved them. And as kids, we all look forward to coming out and watching the clowns play just because there was a doggone much fun.
The Pierotti's Clowns was an amateur ball club. They didn't make a cent off of their games. They did charge admission on the order of 25 cents, 50 cents, or $1. And over the course of their 25 years, they made $200,000 that was all donated to a variety of charitable causes. This has been estimated to be worth $2 million today.
I never got any money on any of the trips we ever made. We all seemed to take care of ourselves. And all the money that I'm sure that Kiwanis had always went to a very good reason. Or wherever, whoever wanted or whoever needed the money at the time to do something.
We never took any money at all for our travels, for our meals, for playing any time at all. And it was just something we did. It was, I don't know, it was just something that made you proud to do.
I love the story of the Pierotti's Clowns. The more I've come to know these men and their families and the circumstances of their lives, the more I've come to appreciate this story and its value for us today. Like every family, they had struggles and challenges and obstacles to overcome, but they did that in a cheerful and giving way, creating a great sense of community and optimism and hope.
They still love the clowns. You know, on Facebook, 2 days, 200 hits, over 200 hits. That speaks pretty well to their popularity and their longevity. Clowns were fantastic, and we loved them. They were our boys.
And make something happen for the community that the community could be proud of. And I think, you know, there's always a possibility in the future that there will be another Bun Ryan, another Lou Pierotti. They could have any kind of effect on the community other than softball or baseball, whatever, but get together and help your community out.
We hope that this exhibit will rekindle within you the spirit of cheerful giving in your community. Play ball.